Welcome back. Now, as we promised you, we're going to be tackling matters of femicide, given the statistics that we have and the president's affirmations or other conversations this evening or today, when he said that we have two things. We have to tackle this issue as a criminal issue and also just look at ourselves in terms of society where our morality stands. It seems it is frayed. Now, joining me and has been here as our guest studio, you should have anchored one of those two stories, read them out. He's none other than ALBERTA WAMBUA, Executive Director, Gender Violence Recovery Center. Thank you for being with us from the start, and now we're getting into the crux of the matter. Now, President has said, and you said that it is not a gender issue when you talk about gender-based violence, that also men suffer gender-based violence. But now let's gravitate to femicide, because in January alone, statistics indicate that 10 women died. January of this year. When you're looking at the numbers to now, I mean, we're in the hundreds. What do you think is actually fueling this rate?
Tough question. So we're actually more than the hundreds.
Yes.
Let me start from there. Just the last 3 months, we had 97 women being killed, femicide cases, as mentioned last week by the Inspector General of the National Police Service. When you look at femicide, and more reason why we need to, let me say, name it and not call it homicide, so that's exactly what you're saying. So then there's more understanding about the inequalities and the killing of the women. A lot of these deaths are not counted. You know, a lot of them, and have gone to different counties, listened to different people, state and non-state actors. A lot of them are not, if they don't reach the media, no one gets to know about them. A lot of the femicide cases also are usually a lot of them, you know, some of them would start with domestic violence cases. When you look at the African hub, the statistics, they mention that 75% of the alleged perpetrators are actually known to the survivors. So it's within the home setting, it's by people that they're familiar with, the people they know. Yeah. So those ones might not get into the space of, you know, being known. It's going to be a cover-up. What causes this? Exactly what the president said. It's a crime and a moral issue. So crime is at the end. And moral issue. Yes. So
before you answer that, there's something that you have mentioned there, and maybe we can start off by unpacking that.
Yes.
How do we distinguish femicide from homicide? Because I feel sometimes the data and the conversation gets lost in explanation.
So femicide is when it's intentional killing of women. And intentional killing, intentional murder of women. And it can happen in different ways, yeah? So, for example, you prefer a certain gender of a child, so you kill in what do you call it? Killing of the infants, yes. You know, or the fetuses, because it's a female. Yes, infanticide. It can also be, for example, female genital mutilation and the deaths that result out of that. The others that are dowry related, you know, killing of women. The others, as we said, through domestic violence, for example. I'll give you another example. The cyclist was just recent. So the cyclist who was on one of the bypasses, you know, and she was stabbed and taken to the forest. We have, for example, Rebecca being the third athlete being killed in 5 years in Kenya. You know, so that's a result of gender-based violence. So that's how I differentiate that you're being killed for the simple fact that you're a woman. Some of it is even rituals, some of it is revenge, cults, you know, and things like that.
When you say it that way, my blood crawls. It's very scary. But that aside, now let's talk about the relationship status, because if we look at the numbers, if we say 41% of women who've been married have experienced, you know, physical violence compared to 20% who are not married, it clearly points to the fact that this form of violence happens within a relationship. Yes. It doesn't happen without.
Yes.
So, in that particular setup, what are the telltale signs?
So some of it, I would say, for example, is how your partner would not, what should I say, disregard of your rights. You know, your right to choose, your right to speak up, you're right sometimes to even interact with others. I've met people who be married and told you have to leave your friends alone, no interaction with your family. Humiliation. You find that there is humiliation, there's gaslighting, there's manipulation, you know, you shouldn't go to work, there's isolation. Someone just gives you a cold shoulder. It's not there to support you in your dreams, or, you know, just not bringing up the best version, you know, out of you. Lots of control. You shouldn't go to work, you shouldn't go out, you shouldn't do this. And forgetting that you're a human being and have your own rights, you know. Erratic behavior. I've met partners who you'd wait upon to know your partner's mood, to know how then you need to act accordingly, if that makes sense.
Basically, you're walking on eggshells with
walking on eggshells. Yeah,
you do not know if I smile, if I'm going to trigger an argument or physical violence and such.
Yes, so there's no equal partnership, lack of a better word, you know, and you're made to really trust your self-esteem and your self-worth.
Alberta, then you're talking about intangible. This is all happening on a psychological, emotional spectrum, so to speak. And we find it very difficult to verbalize this because you have no evidence, you know. I'm saying this because then we have to look at the process of getting redress or justice. You have a rescue center. What do you think about, you know, the process of just getting redress and justice? Because as far as I'm concerned, and I'm waiting to hear if that has changed, you have to have evidence. But then how do I present evidence on emotional violence, mental, you know, gaslight? How do I even? How do I begin? I'll sound mad. How then does it affect even the process of redress?
So you don't have to provide evidence to get help. But that's how we are socialized, and those are the social norms, you know. So when you go and say, my husband abused me, for example, or my wife abused me, you will be laughed at. And does he provide? Does he take care of you? And you're made to feel, so what was the problem? There's also a lot of victim blaming, yeah? Exactly. Your kids go to school, you're running, you know, you have a good life, you know. So how again is your husband abusing you? You know, you went to school, you're educated. So there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of expectation from the society, from a religious Christian, you know, or a religious, let me say, religious country. So there's a lot of also the religion and the teachings that, you know, for example, a woman holds a house together, divorce is a sin, you know, and things like that. So exactly what you're saying, a lot of people, then the physical, the emotional abuse, you'll keep quiet. Sometimes that manipulation and brainwashing, you think that what's being done to you is because it's your mistake. Yeah, I'm the one who didn't cook food on time, that's how I was beaten, I deserve it. You know, you make it true. Yeah. Or, you know, I'm not looking good enough, you know, I'm just, and that's why you deserve it, you know, the abuse that you're getting. And then there's a cycle of abuse, of course. You know, that also makes us not reach out. Yes. So I beat you and then I give you flowers and chocolates and I say it's the devil.
Abuse. Let's keep that one on ice for now, because that's the reason why we still have domestic violence cases going unreported, and some communities also opting to have kangaroo courts to try and solve it in-house. Tonight's conversation is about femicide and the telltale signs. We're building your capacity, my capacity. We're speaking to none other than ALBERTA, who is the Executive Director of GVRC, that is the Gender Violence Recovery Center. We'll be right back after this break. Good evening. We're picking up from where we left off, and we're talking about the cycle of abuse and how it affects, you know, quest by survivors to get redress for what has been done to them. So, ALBERTA, how are you explaining, you know, take us through the cycle of abuse and how it affects psychologically and also just the actions that the victim actually does? What are the mix?
So there's the tension building. You know, tension, sometimes not, it can come in different forms. Sometimes not talking to you, or you don't cook on time. Earlier you told me, when someone verbalizes it, I'll kill you. That's already a red flag.
Yeah, when someone tells you, I'll kill you, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
They have thought about it.
Exactly. So it starts with that tension building, or you're so fat, you're not looking good, you know, really putting you down. And then you have the aggression, you have the actual act. Then you're beaten up, the excuses after that, you know, I'm sorry, you get your flowers, you get your gifts. Ni shetani, you know, it's the devil that made me do this.
Blame the devil or alcohol.
Yeah, it's so unfair. Oh, yeah, and alcohol, you know, and or you didn't cook right, or you've changed, you know, and things like that. And then there's that calm stage after that. So this becomes a cycle, and that creates also confusion in the survivor, because you're wondering, okay, do I report, do I not? The things that we talked about earlier, some of it is the social norms. That's how we were raised. So you one of your parents being abused or them fighting and all that, and you're thinking that's how it works. You have all these teachings, you know, and socialization that a woman, her place is in the kitchen, her place is in the house, you know, just calm down, take care of your kids, ignore, you know, it's okay for this man to behave, you know, give it time.
Go on your
He'll
knees.
Change. Oh yeah, prayer room. Is it the war room or the prayer room? That one. I wonder why it's for women and not for men.
Good question. Now, let's bring, because we're addressing this and we're building capacities, and we've said that we are all potential victims to violence.
Yes.
But then now we're looking at the woman perspective. How then do we recalibrate ourselves as a society? Because I'd pose a question to you. You have a rescue center. A majority of those who find themselves in violent relationships are in one way or another dependent on their partners.
Yes.
We are rescuing them, but are we giving them financial support? Or are we, because that is likely, they're likely to go back to the same person, because illiteracy as well as financial dependency has also been highlighted as one of the reasons why we are having gender-based violence.
Yes.
How do we tackle that effectively?
Yes, those are contributing factors, but you first have to make sure that the survivor is safe. So you have to provide the medical treatment, the psychosocial support. Where I work, it spans even for about 1 year. That's the psychosocial support. The medical treatment is up to 6 months. If there are further injuries, may take a longer period. So you work on that first. As you do that, you provide, of course, temporary shelter. You have to make sure the survivors are safe. Some of them are actually brought to the hospital by the alleged perpetrator, and you're told it was someone else. So you're given a story to hide on that. So then we provide temporary shelter, 24 hours to 48 hours. And currently, with support of the Embassy of Denmark in Kenya, we're then establishing other 13 counties, or supporting 13 shelters in 13 counties. So that during that period, you want to empower that woman, not even financially first. You want to build that self-esteem. Yes. Some of these women, they're very financially stable, but they're being abused. So you want to build that, you know, believe in themselves. You want to provide them with, you know, a space just to heal, to feel safe. And then, as you say, there's also the idea of breaking the cycle of violence, providing that economic empowerment. So that's being provided with ourselves, through partners, but also by the government. So that's also happening, and that's very important. Some of them, it's even just building those skills.
What about the reporting aspect? Because I'm looking, you know, justice, the justice process.
Yes.
What has been your experience? We've had, since we had a change in some of the gender bills that we've had, we have made inroads from a judicial point of view.
Oh, yes.
But is that the situation on ground?
Yes, it's getting better. 2 years ago, we'd provide expert legal testimony in court for about 400 survivors. Last year, we did 800. It doubled up. So some of the judicial changes that you're making, and for people to report, it's only when you know there's a responsive reporting mechanism that is safe, that's not giving you re-traumatization, that is becoming fast, that is supportive, that doesn't, you know, that keeps you safe in that safe space. So that has happened. So what has happened with the judiciary, there's now 14 SGBs, sexual gender-based violence courts. They're actually also, they call them judicial weeks, where you're having fast tracking. They just say this week is for child court, you know, cases and all that. Around COVID, we also had virtual court sessions, and that's still happening. That's when they started, still happening. So making it easier for even courts to be attended to. We have a department under the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution just dealing with sexual gender-based violence cases. So that's happening. So that then gives that specialized. Yes, we've made inroads. There's also a lot of, there's also a lot of awareness to the survivors for them to know, and the public, as you said, we're all potential. So there's a lot of awareness on how you can get this assistance. Yes.
Now, from what you have heard, and maybe you can correct me there, is that for someone to actually be abusive, they have to first erode your self-esteem. It has to start by bringing you down so that they can hurt you. Is that correct?
Depends, because the people who would abuse you, well, the like rape cases, sometimes it's
no,
people
I'm
you
looking
don't
at that
know.
in an
intimate partner violence.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd say yes. Some of them, yes, a lot of it. What I would say is a lot of this abuse is not, you can't say it was just physical abuse. There was psychological abuse. Sometimes there was economic abuse. There was emotional abuse. So it's very hard to say this was the only form of abuse, if that makes sense. So yes, there's a lot of that. Or even lying to you, lying to you in terms of making you feel so important, that erratic behavior. So sometimes it's a mix of that, so it leaves you so, exactly. So it leaves you so confused that you can't even tell sometimes that you're being abused.
I think we're in a very bad situation, so to speak, because there's so much that is happening and we don't have a finger on it. There's no map going forward. And as we bring this conversation to a close, given what is going to be happening in November there, we've had already FIDA and other stakeholders pronounce themselves that they are going to be going to the streets because they need better policies, supportive work environment, homes and such. What do you think really needs to be done from where you sit? We need to put, what would I say, actions, yeah? When you started, you talked about, there was a whole protest in January. Yeah, there were 10 in January alone. The last 3 months, there are 97. We spoke about those that are not being counted. So we need to stop the talking. In January, there are actually things that were put in place. There was, I believe, was it another DCI or somebody who then they were supposed to take action and follow up and all that. And exactly what the president said. So there's a moral problem. The whole country just, I mean, what would justify you to kill anyone, whether woman or man, or to abuse anyone, So there's a whole moral issue there, and all that. Then, if the place was safe, there are countries in this Africa that you can walk in the street at midnight, as a woman and go jog and do things and no one is going to hurt you. Africa, in a study that was done in 2022 by the UN nations, Africa was the leading in femicide cases at 22,000. I mean, so it's just about, it's a criminal offense. That's the other way to stop it. Yeah? So that then those who are caught, can they just be dealt with? I was about to say eye for an eye, but can it just happen and let there be justice, let it be timely, let it be publicized so people can know that, and declaration and everyone just acting on it. There is no shortcut. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking about it and it seems like, oh yeah, emerging trend, It's not fashionable. We will not even water down that message there. It is not fashionable to keep on talking about gender-based violence or femicide. It's a high time that we acted and stopped talking. Words from my guest tonight, ALBERTA WAMBUA, the Executive Director of Gender Violence Recovery Center. I'm REGINA MANYARA. I wish you a pleasant evening ahead. Stay safe.